business. What's your reaction to Robert Saleh's situation as a friend?
Well, it's certainly disappointing. Robert, in my eyes, I think he's one of the best at what he does. And, it's disappointing. Obviously, me as his friend, I thought he's done a lot of good things there, and but it is what it is. But I do think, when you see this stuff go on and happen in our league, it's part of our business, but it certainly makes you appreciative of where you're at right now with the Green Bay Packers and just the kind of leadership that we have here. And, what an honor it is to work for this great organization where we've gone through some ups and downs at times, and they were so supportive. So it definitely makes you pause for a minute and think about that.
You mentioned how communication's paramount with Romeo coming back today. Did you communicate anything to the team in the team setting?
I'm not going to get into any of that. We addressed it and we're moving forward.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Couple of comments from Matt LaFleur, who spoke to the media a half hour ago, 45 minutes ago, within the last hour, let's say. That's actually how his press conference ended. I believe it was the second to last question. What are your thoughts on the Robert Saleh firing? I just thought they were interesting. It's probably nothing. But he said a little bit more there than I expected to. Well, it's disappointing. It's just something that jumped out to me. That's all. Felt like he was a little more pointed there than he needed to be. And then to go on to say, it just makes me thankful for where I am here in Green Bay. I thought this yesterday when Robert Saleh was first fired, and we were talking and thinking about all of the implications of Woody Johnson and Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett. I mean, it's a soap opera, and we spent a lot of time talking about it last night. We don't need to rehash all of it tonight. But as I was thinking yesterday about all the players at play and all the details, but one of my thoughts yesterday, I think around lunchtime, I was thinking about this, is the amount of money I would pay. Well, it's actually not a large amount of money because it would be a stupid thing to spend money on. But what I wouldn't give, let's just say, broad strokes, to be a fly on the wall if Matt LaFleur and Robert Saleh were to sit down this offseason, just the two of them, and have some beers. Oh, the stories that those two would tell about their experiences, both coaching Aaron Rodgers with the Jets and with the Packers, both their first head coaching job too. I thought that conversation would be spicy. I'd pay a lot of money to be a fly on the wall in that conversation. The other comment from Matt LaFleur, same presser, just within the last hour, saying, yep, not going to get into what was said, what Romeo said to the team, what was done behind closed doors. Now, he answered a lot of other questions about Romeo Doubs, and I want to play some of those comments for you, but kind of that broad strokes question of, I'm not going to give anything juicy. We're moving on. I thought that was a good way to start tonight's show. It gets us into really the first segment, which I think we should just cover all the details and all the updates of the Packers being back at practice today, because there's quite a few important details that I want to cover and talk about. Most notably is Romeo Doubs being back at practice. So, of course, we'll start there. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Hope you're having an awesome day. This week is flying by. And I was texting a friend earlier this afternoon. It's like, I don't know what it is. Work has felt so easy. I feel like I've had a lot of energy. Sometimes, doing a show at 4 o'clock, this is when most people wind down their work days. This is when my workday winds up. So sometimes I'll be dragging a little bit, not all days, but sometimes. This week, I've been ready to go. And maybe it's because we've had great content. The Jets threw us a nice, juicy content steak yesterday, firing Robert Saleh. Maybe it's that. I don't know. I'm having a great week, and I hope you are as well. I'd love to take your texts and your calls after our first break. If you are feeling motivated, you have something to say, 608-321-1670. I thought the callers and the points made by callers last night were excellent, so let's keep that going. You can watch the live stream, YouTube, Facebook. Just look up the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills, and the show streams on Twitter as well. You can tweet me, follow me, at Wisco Grant. Maybe a sneaky underrated story from today's Packers practice, and this broke a couple hours ago. I passed this along to Bill in the final hour of his show, is everyone is back at practice except for Devontae Wyatt. And yes, that includes Christian Watson. Christian Watson's back at practice today. And when he went down against the Vikings, I thought his leg was broken in 3 different places. Like that, it bent backwards, forwards, sideways, rotated, like his hip was going to pop out of its socket. Like that looked like as nasty of a leg injury as you'll have. And then we learned, oh, it's an ankle. It's not a knee. So no ligaments, no tendons, nothing like that. It's an ankle. But we know through our years of watching football, and maybe you've experienced a high ankle sprain, but high ankle sprains can be really tricky. And I'm not going to go so far as to say, well, you'd rather break it, or I don't know. I'm not a doctor, and I hear people throw comments like that around it. I think every injury is different. I think it's difficult to compare a sprain to a break to a twist every body is different. Every injury is different. But high ankle sprains are not a joke. That can be something that sends a player to IR. That can be something that ends a player's season. Can certainly be something that lingers. And Christian Watson has shown over the years, I'm not going to say that he's a China doll or that he's injury prone. It just seems like different injuries keep popping up. In this offseason, he addressed his hamstrings, which is great. We want to prevent soft tissue injuries. That was just a bad luck injury. But when we saw him go down in the Vikings game, even after we learned that, okay, it's not a knee, but it's an ankle, it's a high ankle sprain, I thought he would end up on IR. I thought he would miss a month, 2. I didn't think there was a chance that he would miss the Rams game and then all of a sudden be back at practice. I did not expect him to be back at practice today. Here's Matt LaFleur again in his presser asked, and I don't really know, again, I don't like to throw shade at the beat for questions that they ask or don't ask. It's a really hard job when you're staring down a coach or a player at the podium. I don't really know what purpose this question was supposed to serve, but I think it was Wildy, can't remember, who asked Matt LaFleur, hey, how important is it to have Christian Watson back at practice?
I think that's a great sign to have him out there. Certainly, we all know what he brings to our offense, to our football team, and we missed him last weekend. So we're really excited to get him back there, and hopefully he continued to progress throughout the course of the week, and we'll see where we're at on game day.
So again, the question was how significant, how important, how good of a sign is it to have Christian Watson back at practice?
I think that's a great sign.
Of course it is. What was he going to say? Well, I don't know. I guess ho-hum, he's back. Of course it's a great sign to have him back at practice. I don't really know what the question was supposed to be. If I was trying to get the juice on Christian Watson, maybe I would have asked, hey, as bad as that injury looked, are you surprised that Watson is back? I mean, because I was shocked. When we first got the practice report, I think it was Ryan Wood who tweeted it out the final hour of Bill's show. And others tweeted it out too, but I just happened to see Ryan Wood's tweet. I said, Bill, can I give you an injury update? Not to interrupt you, but Christian Watson's back at practice. That's significant. That's huge. Now, Christian Watson, we've talked about this. His size, his speed, the over-the-top threat is massive for this offense, and it's not something that's provided from really anybody else. That's not to say that Tucker Kraft can't create explosive plays. We've seen him do that. It's not to say that Jaden Reed can't create explosive plays. We saw both of those players did it Sunday against the Rams. And of course, Romeo Doubs is capable of creating big plays. Any weapon can be schemed and can end up creating an explosive play, but it is the threat of the size and speed of Christian Watson, right, that really adds another element to this offense. That's a conversation that we've had dozens of times. We don't need to revisit that. I also think Christian Watson's disposition, his attitude fits so well with this team. And, we've been discussing Romeo Doubs and how he's concerned with his targets, and that's not entirely surprising. I don't know that I would have bet on Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs or Wicks or any of these guys. I don't know that I would have bet that's the guy, that's the diva in waiting. I don't know. I don't know these guys. I wouldn't have probably bet Romeo Doubs just because he's so mild-mannered. Everything I hear from Christian Watson is team first. I'll do whatever it takes to win. In fact, I went back today and I pulled a comment from Christian Watson after the Colts game. So before the Titans game, after the Colts game, this is after the first Malik Willis game, after the Packers won, Christian Watson did not have a target in this game. He basically blocked for 4 straight quarters. That was his job, to be a decoy and to block. And he was asked about it after the game. Hey, is this cool with you? Like if the game plan is to run, are you okay with just being a blocker?
The motivation to win a football game is enough for me. I can only speak for myself, but I'm going to do whatever it takes to win the football game. Obviously, like you said, everyone wants the ball. Everyone wants to, make plays. But, that's really out of my control. So I just go out there and, do what's called.
I just think his disposition, on top of his skill set, fits so well with this team. I think he plays an important role physically, his size, his speed, the vertical threat, but also his mentality, everything I've heard from him, fits exactly what this Packers team needs from him, especially a guy who is basically a first-round pick. Not quite. He was top of the second-round pick. But if there was a player on this team who had the profile and the draft, I guess, status to claim that, hey, I'm on track to be a number one. I want to get number one targets and I want to get number one money, that guy, I guess, would be Christian Watson. And yet, this dude blocks his ass off as long as the team is winning. And that's what he said. And Matt LaFleur's hinted at that too. It's like, look, if we're winning games, everything else kind of falls into place. He reiterated that in his presser earlier today. And I'll try to bring you some of that audio as the show continues. So Christian Watson being back at practice today, absolutely massive. That's really, really, really significant. Now, Romeo Doubs is back as well. I don't know if he's going to meet with the media. I don't know if he's going to have a scrum in front of his locker. I've been out of the corner of my eye here just refreshing Twitter. I've seen clips of him back at practice. Jair back at practice today as well. Matt LaFleur, I watched that presser. I saw comments from Jordan Love in front of his locker. I'd play you some of those comments, but the audio is so crummy. I wish that Jordan Love would just go to the podium. I understand why he doesn't, because it puts him on a higher plane of being. And that's why Aaron Rodgers did his presser in front of his locker too, is because he didn't want to be like Favre, where he thought, I'm going to get dressed separately. I'm going to change separately. I'm going to do my press conference separately. I get why. I just wish we could get better audio of what Jordan Love was saying. But basically, he said, Doubs is back. We're ready to move on. We're ready to move forward and move past this. I thought for sure Romeo Doubs would meet with the media today. And I haven't seen it yet. And if he doesn't, it's not inherently a bad thing. But it invites speculation. Right? If I was Romeo Doubs, if I represented Romeo Doubs, if I was handling PR for the Packers, I would want Romeo Doubs to speak with the media, answer questions, explain what happened, not give away any dirty details, but basically to speak to the media, to do a presser in front of his locker and to give the company line and to say the right things and to basically say, hey, I lost my cool last week. I had a bad day. I didn't sleep good. Say whatever you want. I don't know. Say you were having a bad day. You were in a bad mood. You had some bad pizza the night before. Say whatever. Again, I always say of press conferences, you're not under oath. Say whatever. I'm not saying lie with every word that comes out of your mouth, but you can form narratives. That's literally what press conferences are for. That's why PR departments exist. That's why all of these teams, professional sports teams, have a public relations coordinator, a media coordinator, whatever. Mike Vasallo, Jason Wallers for the Packers. They coordinate this stuff, right? This is an opportunity for Romeo Doubs to go in front of the media and say, look, I was having a bad day. I was frustrated with my role. I communicated it in the worst way possible. I regret it. Absolutely won't happen again. It killed me not to be out there on Sunday with my teammates, and I just can't wait to get back to practice, back to work, and I can't wait to play again this Sunday with my teammates and to go out and to try to get a win. That's what Romeo Doubs should go in front of his locker and say. Now, could still happen. I don't know how long the locker room is open to the media today, and I'm refreshing Twitter because I want to make sure that I don't miss it. If he doesn't speak with the media, I suppose that could mean nothing. It could mean that Packers don't feel the need, and Romeo Doubs doesn't feel the need. He's back. We're moving on. Okay. It could also mean that Romeo Doubs is still a little peeved, still a little bent out of shape, and the Packers maybe don't fully trust him to go in front of the media because they think if he holds a presser that he might say something that he shouldn't. Or he might say something at the very least that keeps this narrative going. He might say something or do something that leads this story to persist, which is concerning. Right? I wanted to hear Romeo Doubs speak today to basically put this to bed. And I think to fully put this to bed, he does have to speak. He does have to talk with the media. I think there's a certain level of accountability. If you're a third-year pro and you have enough confidence to demand more targets, and you have enough confidence to be worrying about your next contract, and I don't hold that against him, then you can be a big boy and talk with the Packers beat for a couple minutes. This isn't the New York media. Right? This is Green Bay, and that's not to say that these reporters aren't good, but they're going to ask the boilerplate questions. You're going to give a state-sponsored, coordinated answer the Packers will coach you up on. That will satisfy the requirement. That'll throw us the red meat on sports talk radio and on the internet that we need to say, okay, everything seems cool. We don't have to worry about this anymore. We don't have to focus on this. We can move on. And it doesn't seem that we have that yet. And again, I'll refresh Twitter one more time before we take this break. Now, Christian Watson speaking with the media. So it looks like the locker room's still open. Watson says 2 days isn't going to ruin 3 years of work and commitment he's put in for us. It'll definitely be a little weird right away just because it was a pretty significant situation for him. So Christian Watson speaking with the media. I think we're going to get Doubs at some point tonight, and I'm really interested to hear what he has to say. Christian Watson pointing out, it was significant. It's going to be a little weird. Just not showing up for practice is not insignificant. Blowing up at your coach and leaving practice is not insignificant. Interesting commentary from Christian Watson. Let's take a break. A couple minutes, we'll come back. I have some comments from Matt LaFleur that I can play for you. He doesn't really shine light on what was said and what happened. He doesn't give us the dirty details of what happened between him and Romeo Doubs, but he gives us a little, I guess, peek behind the curtain of how he thinks about players' usage, how he thinks about if a player is unhappy, here's how he should go about expressing that. So we can get into the mind of Matt LaFleur a little bit. And I'm going to keep refreshing Twitter because I think we'll hear from Romeo Doubs at some point. And if we don't, again, I have questions. That allows my mind to wander. Why isn't he speaking with the media? Is it because Romeo doesn't want to? Well, I don't know that I love that. Or maybe it's that the Packers don't want him to because they don't trust that he'll say the right things. And they don't trust that he's not going to go out there and make a comment that allows this story to persist, which is absolutely what the Packers don't want. 3 minutes. I'm going to continue to watch on Twitter to see if Doubs starts speaking with the media or anything else comes out of the Packers locker room today as they're back at practice. And your thoughts as well. 608-321-1670 to you next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Now that it's behind you, I wanted to know if you would tell us how difficult it was to make the decision to suspend him, because coaches don't want to suspend players. It's hard enough to get through a season.
Yeah, it's always, you never want to get to that point. And that's why I think, one thing that's so important for all of us involved is you got to communicate. And if there's an issue, you got to communicate so we can work it out together. And unfortunately, there's a standard that you have to live by. And if you don't, there's going to be consequences. And I've made that very clear to our team. Like, there's a level of professionalism, but you know what? Each moment is a learning experience. And like I mentioned last week, it was a one-off, and we're moving forward.
It's a little comment from Matt LaFleur about an hour ago. The last 4 or 5 minutes of his press conference today were all Romeo Doubs thoughts, questions, Q&As, back and forths, right? So I want to play more from Matt LaFleur from earlier today, and I'm watching Twitter as well. Christian Watson is talking about Romeo Doubs right now. I don't know if Doubs is going to speak. I think he should. If he doesn't, I'll have more questions than answers. Christian Watson, and this is from Matt Schneidman, says 2 days isn't going to ruin the 3 years of work and commitment he's put in for us. It'll definitely be a little weird for him right away because it was a pretty significant situation for him. Okay. He continues, we all have our own individual goals, so you never really know what somebody's thinking, and I still never want to talk down and on anyone's mental health. Still don't really know the exact specifics of the situation, but whenever someone's going through something, they do things that you wouldn't really expect from them. And this hints at the idea, a lot of people, since Bill Huber has reported this, and others, have come out to say, well, there's more to this story that we're not being told. Like what? Like he was having a crummy day? I could have told you that. No one doesn't show up to work unless they are not struggling. Right? No calls, no shows. No one blows up at their boss in front of all of their coworkers. Of course he was having a bad day, right? The fact remains is he's unhappy with his role. Now, it maybe came to a head because he was having a bad day, a bad week. He was struggling with his mental health. That doesn't excuse any of this. If Romeo Doubs comes out and says, yeah, my mental health's been a little weak. Okay. Let's find a way to get that addressed. You got to come to practice. You can't no call, no show to the point where the team has to send people to your house. Still doesn't make it okay. 608-321-1670, couple open phone lines. If you call in, you want to add your 2 cents. You won't have to wait very long. Let's go to the phones. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, how you doing? Long time no chat, buddy.
Matt in Cross Plains?
Indeed, Matt in Cross Plains calling from downtown, though.
What's going on, Matt?
Just got off work. Beautiful sunny day. And I thought I'd give you a ring and see how things were. It
is a beautiful sunny day. Things are good. We're just waiting to see if Romeo Doubs is going to speak in the locker room today and what more becomes of this. Because this is the first time the Packers are back at practice and available, I guess. The first time players are available since this all went down, and we learned about it on Saturday.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have all your receivers back. You never know when you're going to need them, obviously. Even though he was having a bad day, it'll be good to have him back, and hopefully he can continue to produce. Like when he did his last couple of years. He's got to be a leader, right? He's got to be a leader of the wide receivers, I think, even if he isn't getting his touches, as they say.
Well, and that's another thing about this offense. Bill and I talked about this on Monday. Like, who is the veteran presence on offense that could go to Romeo Doubs' house last week and say, all right, we're going to sit down, we're going to have dinner, and, we're going to hash through this. We're going to talk this out. Or at the very least, give him a call. Like, who is that guy? Romeo Doubs has been playing in the NFL longer than Jordan Love has been. Josh Jacobs is a veteran, but he just got there. And does an offensive lineman really have that kind of juice? Like, does Elton Jenkins have that much juice in the room? I don't know. Who is that guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I never thought of it that way, but I always thought of Doubs as being the guy who was, selfless and the leader of the offense. Honestly, that's what I thought of him. Because he is, durable. He's played more games than Christian Watson, right?
The best ability is availability. Some say.
Yeah, that's true.
Many
maybe
say.
Watson went and told him to get his stuff together. I don't know.
Yeah, but again, maybe. But who is Christian Watson to Romeo Doubs? He's been in and out of the lineup. They came into the league in the same year, same draft. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know that there is a veteran. Like Aaron Jones could have been that guy last year. That's a great example. There's no Aaron Jones.
Yes, it's true. Maybe they base it off 40-yard dash times. I don't know, because Watson's faster. So he was like, "Hey, buddy, I'm faster than you. So you gotta come play. Get this out of your head. come help this team win. Let's go win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I don't know, Grant.
Winning,
Seems like,
winning fixes most things.
yeah, most things it does. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think we're going to beat Arizona, so it's not really a problem, But like I said, it's always good to have most of your players healthy in case, the inevitable happens and somebody goes down with an injury every week. So.
Well, of course. And can you trust on Tavian Wicks to catch the ball? It's Matt in Cross Plains. Appreciate it. Whatever's going on downtown. I hope you're enjoying your night. Thanks for calling and checking in, Matt. We don't have anything from Romeo Doubs. Christian Watson is speaking. And if Watson is speaking, I think we should still have a little time with the locker room open here. And I'm going to keep watching Twitter. I think Dobbs should speak to the media. Q's commenting on the live stream. Q, per usual, I could not disagree more with what you're saying. He said, no news is better than bad news. I'm glad he didn't talk. No matter what he would have said, it would have been picked apart. Well, yeah, then show up to work. Then you don't have to worry about it. Don't portray him like a victim here. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
It's Q. You beat me to the punch.
Hey, Q, what's going on?
Yeah, I feel for Romeo Doubs. Like, we've all had bad days, and he's under a microscope because he's a professional athlete.
He put himself under a greater microscope when he didn't show up for work. Look, I'm not beating him up that much. Things happen, but let's not act like he's being victimized by sports media. He's the one who started this all by blowing up at his coach and then not showing up to work.
So I think you are an expert at like talking to the media and like listening to this type of stuff.
Sports media literacy, maybe let's call it that.
And you had a fantastic, like, this is what I would say if I was Romeo Doubs tomorrow in the locker room. And it was like flawless in my mind. And Bill picked it apart for like 5 minutes because you said like the word, what word did you
accommodate was the word I used.
Accommodate. Yeah. So it's like, if he uses one word wrong, like it's going to set Bill off and everyone else in the media. Like, I personally, like, I think he should talk about it at some point. It's probably too fresh for him to talk about it now. And if we wait till Sunday, like if he catches a touchdown, imagine having this conversation with like a huge smile on your face because you scored a big touchdown to win the game. Like it just makes things a lot easier. So, but definitely, like, I want to hear him speak. Like, if he was my employee, like I would throw him to the wolves probably. but I think it's just better for everybody that we wait a week or something like that. So I don't know that I'm here's my problem with that, Q, is Jordan Love is answering questions about this and Matt LaFleur is. Now it's Matt LaFleur's job as the head coach to talk about everything. So I don't have sympathy for Matt LaFleur. He's doing his job, but Christian Watson is answering questions about this. Jordan Love's answering questions about this. They have to speak on this. So no, I don't think Romeo Doubs should just get to dodge the media for a week where everything is going to calm down and cool down. Like, he doesn't just get to wait until this blows over. I think you should have to speak. And by the way, I'm not acting like a rabid dog. Get him in front of a microphone. Like, no, it's just, that's the way that it works, right? You create a big sports story. You don't show up for practice. You should have to explain it to everyone. And no, he's not going to give us the dirty details of everything that went down, but you got to be accountable for your actions on some level. And he was suspended, but part of that is, the media, the beat gets to ask you about it, and you have to stand there and fulfill your obligation as an NFL player. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. Speaking of accountability, Q online in the comments, he always comes across a lot different versus when he actually calls in.
So I was thinking about mentioning that at the end of this call, because online, Q, if you're still listening, you're a little bit of a prick. And then you call in and you're jokey and you're laughing. And I enjoy your calls. I like just about I don't know that there's a caller that I really dislike who calls this show. Q, you're a little bit of a prick on the internet, and then you're a little more buddy-buddy when you call in, which is fine. I just, we ask for consistency. That's what we want from our athletes, right, Cone? I don't see why this should be any different.
Amen. And, today's theme in the sports world is really accountability, just with Romeo Doubs, Aaron Rodgers. Fun little hypothetical. Would this Romeo Doubs situation ever happen if Aaron Rodgers was still the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers? I
don't know. I've been thinking about that. And that goes back to what I was talking about with Matt in Cross Plains. I don't know who the guy is on offense who can call Romeo Doubs or go over to his house and say, look, we're going to work this out right now. And I think Aaron Jones last year might have been that guy. He could have been that guy. Love, maybe, but Romeo Doubs has been an NFL starter longer than Jordan Love. You know what I mean? So that becomes a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, and maybe not having a veteran on this team, that kind of goes back to what I was saying maybe a couple months ago. Like, there needs to be a Super Bowl winning move that the Packers make at some point this season to get a vet in there to just from a pure leadership standpoint, someone who's had success in the playoffs, been a part of winning organizations. I still think that's one of the missing puzzle pieces to this team, and most likely probably the offense.
I think they have those guys on defense. Kenny Clark is young, but he's been playing football for a long time. Preston Smith is that guy. On offense, and like, look, maybe if Andy Reid was the head coach, it would be a little different, but Matt LaFleur is younger, and I don't know if he comes across as an authoritarian either, right? So there might be something to that, and I don't know that means they acquire. The thing is they don't have a roster need. They don't have a natural spot. We'll bring in a veteran wide receiver, a tight end. They're just so flush at just about every position.
Yeah, maybe like a Mercedes Lewis, bring him back. Randall Cobb, I know he retired.
Coach him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cobby, coach him up. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. That's a good call, Cohen. I appreciate it. We got to get to a break. I'll have some more commentary from Matt LaFleur. I'll take more of your calls as well if you're on hold. I just got to get a break in. It's the Wisco Sports Show. We're back in just a few.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show, rolling on. We're talking Packers. Busy day of Packers news. A lot of developments, right? Christian Watson, first and foremost, being back at practice is huge. Now, we knew that earlier this afternoon. That was reported. Practice began in the final hour of Bill's show. So if you're listening, that's something that we talked about. That's a massive development. That's great news for the Packers. We've also really been waiting since Saturday, since we first really learned of this Romeo Doubs story of him blowing up at Matt LaFleur practice, leaving, no showing to practice. They convinced him to come. Then he left again. So this was a two-pronged incident. Then the Packers suspending him. And ever since we really learned these details late last week and really into the weekend, mostly Saturday morning, I think is when most people really dug into this. Well, let's hear what Doubs has to say when the locker room gets open for the media next Wednesday, when they'll be back at practice. Certainly, he can't dodge the media. He'll have to make himself available. I thought it was almost a certainty that he would. He has not. I've just been following Matt Schneidman's Twitter. He said he wasn't present. Locker room was open for 45 minutes. He wasn't there. Jordan Love spoke to it. Christian Watson spoke to it. I don't mind a player having a bad day. Happens. I could even see if a player had such a bad day and was struggling mentally where he didn't show up for practice. I have a hard time accepting that, but I could. I could be made to accept that. I could be convinced to accept that if the player faced the music, talked to the media, and said the right things. He did not do that today. I'm struggling with this. And while my stock on Romeo Doubs plummets, my stock on Christian Watson's going up. Christian Watson's taking questions from the media. He's talking about this. He's getting his ankle healthy. He's back at practice. My stock on Christian Watson's going up. You know who I like? I like adults on my team. I like mature adults. You know why Jesse Winker sucked in Milwaukee and has sucked a lot of places and has worn out his welcome in Seattle, in Cincinnati, in Milwaukee? Is because he's a child. When things aren't going his way, he's petulant and it's everyone else's deal. And when he's succeeding, like we're seeing with the Mets now, he's kind of petulant the other way. And I don't mind a little showboating. I don't mind a little pizzazz. I kind of think contending teams need that, actually. So that's one thing. But man, when things aren't going your way and when you're struggling, you kind of got to be able to deal with it like an adult. See Christian Yelich, who's dealt with how many injuries? Bad luck injuries, right? Fouling a ball off his knee. This year, he's having the best year since 2019 when he was on track to win MVP. When that season was cut short by a knee injury, a foul ball off his knee. Then he has to have back surgery this year. And yet who's talking with the media, speaking on behalf of the franchise like an adult, like a mature adult. Christian Watson's doing it. He's speaking like a mature adult. Jordan Love speaking like a mature adult. Where's Romeo Doubs? I don't know. He wasn't available for the media in the 45 minutes that the locker room was open. That's not insignificant to me. And I see Greg, or G-Dub, as you might know on the morning show, he's commenting on the live stream saying, what did you say exactly? People are just giving him a pass. You included, Grant. Dobbs just having a bad day. Seriously, I mostly agree with you. And G-Dub, I can overlook the bad day. And I can overlook not showing up to practice, even though it's a reach. It's a big reach for me to overlook not showing up for practice. That's a big deal. Not showing up for practice and quitting on your teammates, they're not the same thing, but God, it's like 85%. It might even be 95%. It might be chimpanzees and human beings. They're not the same, but there's how much DNA do we share with chimps? I was watching a Jane Goodall video the other day. I was on the John, just scrolling Instagram reels. I'm like, oh, here's Jane Goodall on Kimmel, I think. She's like, yeah, we share like 98% of our DNA with chimps. I'm like, oh, that sounds about right. Quitting on your team, not showing up for practice, it's like humans and chimps. It's like 98% the same thing. And I could get past it if Romeo Doubs would speak with the media like an adult, be accountable for his actions, and then get back on the field, do his job, and move on with this thing. But facing the music and being accountable for your actions is part of that. He didn't do that today. I don't like this. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's Justin from Eau Claire.
Hey, Justin. What's going on?
Not much. I've got a little thought about this Dobbs stuff. I think you and Q are both partially right that Packers may be preventing him from talking just because they're scared of what he's going to say because it's still too fresh. Maybe Dobbs isn't quite over it, but it's better since he's back at practice.
That could be true. That could be true. And but also like that concerns me. If the Packers don't trust him to go and speak to the media like an adult, to me, that's a sign that he's not over this and it's still a problem. You know what I mean, Justin?
Mm-hmm. I also wonder if he's worried about, because obviously his contract year is next year, but he hasn't been putting up great stats. I wonder if the Malik Willis play obviously Love going down, not his fault, but got to him more than Watson did, because Watson said he doesn't care right now. He just wants to win. But I wonder if Dobbs is almost a little more concerned with his future and making his stats and his season look better to get another contract.
It could be. It could be. It totally could be. But Justin, here's my problem. If he was concerned about his targets and his next contract, this is not the way to go about that. Now, maybe have a sit down with your position coach, communicate that to Matt LaFleur, which is kind of what he talked about. I'm going to play you this comments from Matt LaFleur. Not showing up for practice. Like, what point do you think that's going to make? That's such a bad sign of judgment to me.
Yeah, very true. I just want to say, though, overall, happy that the Packers won. Happy that Watson's back because he is a game changer. Even though his stats aren't the greatest, he has been drawing double teams and coverage the entire time. It allows that offense to operate with a lot more.
Yeah, he's a huge piece, and I like his personality. I like his disposition, and every time I hear him talk, I'm like, okay, I really need this guy to stay healthy because I think he's made of the right stuff. And he's got all the physical tools, too. I think all the pieces are there. We just haven't really seen it all coalesce into, I think, his max potential yet, which is a third-year guy with two different quarterbacks, including a first-year starter. It's not entirely surprising, especially when he struggled to stay on the field. 608-321-1670, Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
This is Hector in Alaska.
Hey, Hector, what do you make of all this?
Oh, gosh, it is just, I agree with you. You know, you got to be a professional. You got to be grown up. That's why, just a real quick shout out to one of your listeners. I know Ozzy's probably listening to this, but don't get Devontae Adams. I heard some rumors that maybe Baltimore.
Nah, Baltimore should.
No.
The Ravens should absolutely try to acquire Devontae Adams.
No, because I'm very much like you, and every place he goes to, it doesn't go his way. He cries. He sits on the bench. He complains. He makes everything about him, and that's not what we need. We got a nice little vibe going.
Do you ever want to beat the Chiefs, Hector, as a Ravens fan? Hector
God.
Is a Ravens fan. Do you ever actually want to beat the Chiefs? Because you're not, unless the team gets hot, you get a little luck, and you really actually goose it up and make some moves. Because this Ravens team, I know they look great, and they're running the ball. You know how this movie ends. You've seen this movie before.
I know. Yeah, and if it's not the Chiefs, it's Buffalo.
Sure.
I know. So my biggest concern is that Tomlin's going to go get him, because we're already. I don't know how, but the Steelers have made this team just good.
This is what they do every year. And you know what, Q? They waste our time. I personally do not like the Steelers because what they do is they win ugly games and it's a bad brand of football. And then their fans piss and moan on the internet about how they don't get any credit. It's because we don't think you're serious because you don't have a good quarterback. If Devontae Adams goes to the Steelers, oh my God. First of all, he'll be playing with, his quarterback situation will not improve. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both stink. And that will just be a sign to me that the universe is smiting and punishing Devontae Adams for asking out of Green Bay in the first place.
Right. So that kind of ties me into one other question I've been kind of mulling over, and I have brought it up to a couple of friends just discussing football stuff, and I'll, listen to your answer on the other end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But who do you think dodges a bigger bullet moving away from their QBs when they did? The Packers when they moved on from Rodgers after everything that's happened, or the Broncos moving on? The Seahawks moving on from Russell Wilson to the Broncos.
Okay, say that one more time for me.
So who dodged the bigger bullet?
Yep.
The Packers as their organization moving on from Rodgers when they did, or the Seahawks moving on from Russell Wilson when they did, looking at what has happened with each of the QBs in their own craziness since then.
Okay, so that's an interesting question. I like that. Rodgers is a better quarterback. And if Rodgers didn't blow his Achilles last year, that's a big what if I'm going to think about for a long time. I don't think the Jets are good. I don't think they're well run. I don't think they were well coached. And I don't think the Jets had a wink and a prayer at winning a Super Bowl last year. But I would have liked to see what Rodgers looked like without an Achilles injury last year and then this year too, because assumedly he'd be a year more comfortable and a year more confident with this talent and these receivers, and they'd have reps built up together. Garrett Wilson and Rodgers are not on the same page at all. None of these guys are with Rodgers, and they haven't played together. And you could say, well, then he should show up for offseason stuff. Well, he did for a lot of the things. And also I don't think it's as simple as we'll practice together for 2 days. And now all of a sudden when real bullets start flying in London against the Vikings and Brian Flores, everything's going to be okay. I don't believe that. Who dodged the bigger bullet? Here's the thing, Hector. What happens if the Packers just retain Aaron Rodgers? Probably more of the same. I don't think the franchise crumbles into a sinkhole in the earth. And if the Seahawks hold on to Russ, I don't think either situation. I think Seattle is an excellently run organization, and I think Green Bay is also run very, very well. So it would look better than what Russ looked like in Denver. It would have looked better in Green Bay than what Aaron Rodgers has looked like in New York. I think to get the picks that Seattle did, they got a haul for Russ. And that's significant. The Packers got a second and they get a second? They swapped firsts and a second and then another pick the next year. I don't know that either team dodged a bullet. I just don't know that analogy applies. And sorry, I can't give you a much better answer than that, Hector, but I think both teams just would have continued and would have gotten slightly more and more and more middling. I don't think either situation was going to collapse and go up in flames because I think Seattle and Green Bay, unlike Denver and unlike the Jets, are well-run organizations. 608-321-1670. I'll get to some of your texts next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I guess the reason I'm asking is, and again, I haven't played for you, but from my experience with you, it feels like you would listen to someone's concerns. You may not change your game
Yeah.
thing differently, but you do seem like you're the kind of coach who would listen. Is that, you feel like that's true about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to be. I mean, you might not want to hear what I have to say, but I'll always have the conversation. And that's one thing, but it's hard. And I get that the scrutiny these guys are under. That's why I try not to read much, because we're all under it. And it's just, there's a lot of interest in the NFL, and everybody's interested in their own fantasy teams, and you get ridiculed when guys aren't getting the ball or whatever it may be, but that's part of it. But that's, there's a lot of beauty to it too, that there's so much interest in our game, and it's great to come out and be able to play on national TV and having a stadium packed with fans. And so there's a lot of great things that come with it. But I think ultimately what people really remember is the teams that win. And we're trying to do things that are bigger than the individual success. It's all about the team. And when the team wins, I'm a firm believer that everybody will benefit from that.
Matt LaFleur has hinted at that a couple of times this week. Mentioned that a time or two on Monday. Came up a time or two in his press conference today where he's like, look, I know everyone wants to get their stats. Everyone wants to get their targets. I get it. But when you win games, everything kind of falls into place. And I agree. Look, Romeo Doubs didn't speak with the media this afternoon. I think that's probably for a couple reasons. The Packers were probably hesitant to put him in front of the media anyways. I would imagine they went to Romeo Doubs and was like, look, how are you feeling about this? And Romeo Doubs, just guessing by his disposition and personality, probably has some discomfort and some social anxiety about this, said, I don't want to. And the Packers said, okay, well, then that's all we need to hear. We're not making you available then. Fine. Because if the Packers didn't trust him to go deliver the message that needed to be delivered, better just to not do it. And I get that. Okay. You know how this gets fixed? You know how this weirdness and this drama, again, that stems from a player not showing up for practice. It's not like there was a disagreement in a meeting. Stuff happens. You've never had a disagreement with your boss? Happens all the time. If you're a good employee and you're good at your job and you make good points, I don't think a boss would be mad as long as it's in the correct setting, as long as it doesn't get personal. Disagreements happen in business all the time, especially in an emotional sport like football with grown men, with competitors. Of course, there's disagreements. That's not this. He didn't show up. So there's some weirdness. There's some is lingerance a word? Lingerance. I want to look that up. And by the way, Christian Watson hinted at that today. Lingerance. Lingering is a word. Is there a noun for lingering? I don't think so. Christian Watson hinted at this. He's like, yeah, there's going to be some weirdness for a while just because of the significance of what happened. This is going to last. This is going to linger. You know how it dies out? You know how Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and all parties included, you know how everyone gets over this? Gets over it as quick as possible? You win on Sunday. And then you win the next week against Houston. You want to know how this persists? You lose because passes are dropped and penalties are committed and the game is sloppy. That's how this persists. The best way to nip this in the bud is to win football games because when you win, everybody's happy. Everybody's thrilled. And I do agree with Matt LaFleur that even if Romeo Doubs isn't getting quite as many targets as he would get on another team, if they're winning a lot and they're beating other good teams, if they're beating CJ Stroud and they're beating the Niners or they're chasing a playoff spot and they're contending for the division, you do all those things, the football sphere, just generally speaking, the football sphere, other coaches, other general managers, people in the media, they'll take you more seriously. They'll think of you as a winning player from a winning team that goes about their business the right way. You care about the right stuff. That comes with winning. And I don't really like the cliche that winning is the ultimate deodorant. Bill uses that a lot, but it's true. You win on Sunday, this becomes much smaller. You lose on Sunday, and God forbid you lose in a game where Romeo Doubs doesn't get enough targets. Well, then it's a thing. And I think there's some real just guessing from what's obvious. And also what I've asked around and talked to people who interact with Romeo Doubs, there's some real social anxiety there. There's some real awkwardness. That's just the way that he's wired. That's his disposition, and that's fine. That's 100% fine. But also, you got to come to work, right? And if you don't show up for work and you're going to make us think about it, then you need to make good on that. And I think it starts this weekend. You win the game. All of this becomes so much more manageable. But I do think it's significant that he didn't talk to the media today. I think it's a big deal. I said that earlier today, that if he didn't speak, I thought it would be a big deal. I think it's a big deal. I think you can get past it, and it starts by winning on Sunday. More of your calls, your texts. I want to talk a little baseball as well. Jesse Temple set to join us talk Badgers too. Hour 2 next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Packers back in the field for practice today as they begin to prepare for a visit from the Cardinals on Sunday. It's Arizona's first trip to Lambeau Field since 2018 when their win marked the end of the Mike McCarthy era in Green Bay. The Cardinals come in off an upset of San Francisco and sitting at 2-3 on the year. Packers back home after holding off the Rams to get to 3-2. Kick on Sunday is at noon. Turning to the Badgers, they will head to Rutgers on Saturday to face the Scarlet Knights. They will do so coming off their best offensive performance under offensive coordinator Phil Longo. They put up 52 points, nearly 600 yards of total offense. It was a balanced attack with more than 300 yards passing and 200 yards rushing. For Longo, those numbers pointed to an offensive line group getting the job done.
So I always say, as much as we enjoy all these skill guys, the offense is only as good as the offensive line. And that holds true for the running game and for the passing game. And we did a good job on both fronts Saturday. And so it gave, Braden ample time to make some throws, and it opened some holes for some of these backs.
Again, it'll be the Badgers and Scarlet Knights on Saturday. Kick is set for 11.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Farmers deal with a lot, including long days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks, stretch, have a snack, and hydrate your body. Avoid farm accidents by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Bucs preseason slate will continue tomorrow night as they welcome in the Lakers for exhibition game number 2. The regular season fast approaching. Opening night just 2 weeks from today against Philadelphia. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
People whole business. What's your reaction to Robert Sala's situation as a friend?
Well, it's certainly disappointing. Robert, in my eyes, I think he's one of the best at what he does. And, it's disappointing. Obviously, me as his friend, I thought he's done a lot of good things there, and but it is what it is. But I do think, when you see this stuff go on and happen in our league, it's part of our business. But it certainly makes you appreciative of where you're at right now with the Green Bay Packers and just the kind of leadership that we have here. And, what an honor it is to work for this great organization where we've gone through some ups and downs at times, and they were so supportive. So it definitely makes you pause for a minute and think about that.
You mentioned how communication is paramount with Romeo coming back today. Did you communicate anything to the team and the team said?
I'm not going to get into any of that. We addressed it and we're moving forward.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Just a couple comments from Matt LaFleur's press conference earlier today. Give us a little bit of a professional reset as we begin hour number 2. I do have some baseball thoughts. The playoffs continue. Detroit won again. Cleveland hasn't scored in like 20 innings. I believe the Padres will play to eliminate the Dodgers tonight. The Dodgers going to the bullpen game. $1 billion payroll, and you rich bastards still get down in the mud like the rest of us. I love it. I'm not against a bullpen game. I think it gives you a good shot to win. Just think, Dodgers, you think you're so much better than everyone else. Look at you playing for your season, and you're starting a game with relievers. Pathetic. Not actually, but the fact that you get what I'm saying, right? So I want to talk a little bit about baseball. I have some thoughts on Jesse Winker as well. Jesse Temple, going to join us in about a half hour to talk about the Badgers as well. I recorded with him earlier today. I think one of our best. I think Jesse and I build a little more chemistry, a little more juice every single week. So you'll hear that conversation at the bottom of this hour. And then 6 o'clock, the Bill Michaels Huddle takes over. So a lot more Packers coverage to come. Romeo Doubs, if you're just joining the show, did not make himself available to the media today. I don't think that's insignificant. I don't think it's nothing. Romeo Doubs quit on his teammates, depending on your point of view last week. I think it's a very reasonable, very fair point of view to view Romeo Doubs blowing up, leaving, not showing up for practice, the team dragging him to practice, then he left again. It's difficult for me to view that situation as anything but quitting on your teammates, which is pretty bad. Now, it's not unforgivable if handled correctly. I think step one of handling it correctly is Romeo Doubs explaining himself to the media so you can get past it. He didn't do that today, which is sticking in my craw. I also think part of the reason why Romeo Doubs didn't meet with the media today is because he's got some social anxieties, right? Just the way that he is, his disposition, which I think is part of the reason why he's in this problem in the first place. Why the reason this team is in the problem. I like adults. Christian Watson this afternoon proved himself to be an adult, talking about his injury, talking about the Romeo Doubs situation. Jordan Love, obviously, but he's the quarterback. He has no choice, right? That comes with the job description. So a lot of respect for Christian Watson speaking on behalf of his teammate. I'm not going to say I lost some respect for Romeo Doubs, but the goings-on, I had it right the first time. The goings-on of this afternoon are going to make it a little bit tougher and probably prolong the process of getting over what happened last week. And that's assuming that, another incident doesn't come up. If the Packers win this weekend, that goes a long way. Winning games, as Matt LaFleur said in his presser today, and on Monday, by the way, goes a long way in clearing this up and getting back to normal. So the stakes for this weekend, I think, upped by the fact that Romeo Doubs wasn't available to speak with the media to explain his situation today. 608-321-1670, couple calls if you want to get your thoughts in on this Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Grant, how we doing? This is Pete Bukowski calling in from beautiful Washington, D.C.
Pete Bukowski. I haven't seen Pete tweeting about this. I'm interested. Maybe I'll have to listen to Locked on Packers tomorrow and get his spin.
I need to see the podcasters that over the summer were just talking about how awesome it was to have such a huge young group of talented players in the skill positions, all just getting along, all fine and dandy, right? I mean, we're took about 4 weeks for a little adversity to hit, and here we are. Breakdown.
I think the situation is as much a product of Romeo Doubs' disposition as anything else. I don't know that. I don't know, and I think we agree on that. I don't think this is Romeo Doubs. I think he's wired a little bit different, and I think he's going through it a little bit, which is fine. You got to show up for work, though, man.
And I do think, like, if you compare the average, interior offensive lineman to the average wide receiver, you're going to see a trend in dispositions that, these receivers, man, and corners, they have a different level of, headiness, if you will. They're always celebrating emphatically when they do well, and then they come crashing down to earth when it doesn't go well. And, that interior offensive lineman, man, he's doing almost the same thing every damn play. So that guy's just showing up with his lunch pail. So I do think the position groups have quite different dispositions. Not to say all receivers are bad.
No, I love everything I hear out of the mouth of Christian Watson. That's an adult. Yeah. I think that's someone with good perspective. And look, I want all these guys to get paid. I want them all to get theirs. And I agree with Matt LaFleur that if the team wins a lot and they score a lot of points, that remains a possibility for all of them. I think everyone can eat, probably not in Green Bay. And these guys understand that. They know that. But if this team succeeds and puts up a lot of points and wins meaningful games on big stages, then everything's going to work out. I agree with Matt LaFleur on that front.
I did want to touch on Hector's question. I thought it was a good one. It's always fun to evaluate big quarterback moves in posthumously.
Yeah.
When you're comparing Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, the answer is clearly and emphatically the Houston Texans and Deshaun Watson.
That's a good one. Yeah.
6 draft picks, getting 3 first-round picks. Just reading off a couple of the picks that they got. Obviously, C.J. Stroud's one of those picks that they got from the Deshaun Watson trade, but also Tank Dell and Will Anderson Jr. Are you kidding me? 3 guys who could easily be, someday having, maybe not Tank Dell yet, but certainly Will Anderson and C.J. Stroud on track to be some of the best Houston Texans since J.J. Watt. So I think not only the value from the picks, converting those picks into awesome players, and avoiding that Deshaun Watson contract that somebody was going to have to pay. So that's the greatest trade, I think, in NFL history that can, single-handedly turning around a franchise. And it happened kind of around that same time, right in between the Russell Wilson and the Aaron Rodgers move. So it's always fun to see how those big moves pay off. Grant, last question I have before I let you go.
Yeah.
You're in an airport. You have TGI Fridays on one side and P.F. Chang's on the other. Which one would you go to?
P.F. Chang's. You know what drives me nuts about airports? Just give me the classics. I think we've talked about this. I want a McDonald's. I want an Arby's. Just give me. I want to be able to go into an airport. An airport should be like a U.S. embassy. I go around the world. I find a U.S. embassy. There's people with the language that I know. I should be able to go into an airport and be like, what is that restaurant? It's a McDaniel. That's not a I just want McDonald's. You know what I mean? Or a Burger Hut. Or a taco shack. Like, just give me of all of the crap that you got to deal with when you're traveling and through airports with delays. Can you just give me food I know? So I guess P.F. Chang's. I don't need DJ.
I'm a huge P.F. Chang's fan. So I will be eating there, praying to the gods that American Airlines, with like a whole week to prepare for this hurricane, is not going to have nationwide delays.
Where are you?
Because of I'm in D.C., but
okay.
Remember, it's all domino effect.
Yeah.
Somewhere and the pilot's late and the crew's late and it screws up everything, particularly if you're American. So
yeah, well,
maybe I'll spend the whole night at PF Chang's. We'll see.
That's why I fly Delta. I appreciate it, Vagabond John. I know the last time we talked airlines, I went out on a limb for Delta and said I'll never fly anything other than Delta when it's in my control. And sometimes you fly for work, it's not in your control. And then Delta had like the worst outage the next week before. Okay, fine. So one airline, they messed up for a couple days and we're going to hold that against them forever. American United. Nope. And I believe in airports, just play the hits. The 2 or 3 biggest fast food restaurants. I want chains that I trust with food items that I know. I don't want to, like, have you ever seen the memes where they take like a picture of Family Guy and they dilute it a little bit? Like, I think the meme is like effed up in the crib watching Household Dude and it like looks like Family Guy, but it's not quite. Like, why is that every restaurant in airports? It's like, just give me McDonald's. I just want a McChicken. I want something I know and trust. I'm in a strange land in a confined space in this airport. God knows what delays or what issues could happen with my luggage. Can I just get a McChicken? Please. Last time I flew out of MSP, the McDonald's was undergoing construction. Okay, I get it. Okay, sometimes you got to do construction. I actually ended up getting Shake Shack. Shake Shack, sneaky good burger. I was not familiar with Shake Shack's game, so I guess that's a success story from trying out a restaurant that I'd never had before. Shake Shack, good burger. And you know why? It's because it's not too big. They compress it in. It's very manageable. I don't like when you go to a burger place and it's just like this big, disgusting ball of sauce and juice. No, Shake Shack, very manageable. It's your 2 minutes on airport food. 608-321-1670. Good point on the Vagabond, or good point on the Deshaun Watson trade. Vagabond John. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on 990.
Eric on 990. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm a little perturbed that Romeo Doubs didn't make himself available to the media. That means there's more going on here, and I was hoping to have this nipped in the bud tonight before going home to watch Survivor, but this is going to continue to be a thing, it seems like.
Don't worry about Romeo Doubs. His time is almost over in Green Bay.
You think so?
Well, the music is going to stop, and you got 6 guys looking for a chair. It ain't going to be him based on what we're seeing, is it? Right?
I mean, I think that point is a little over-exaggerated. I see Q in the live stream saying, this is why you don't draft a bunch of wide receivers at the same time. Okay, so you're telling me that you don't want to. Okay, I know you're not. I know you're not. I think I think they could pay Watson and Dobbs. No, I don't think they have to jettison half this group. Some of these guys are still in year 2,
right.
Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. But I get what you're saying. Yes.
I think they can. And okay, I'm done. I just want to really know if their contract comes up at the end of this year and you don't see any more out of Watson, why would you pay Watson? Why?
It's a good question. I mean, I don't think they have to. You could let him play out the final year of his deal. You don't get the 5th-year option because he wasn't a first-round pick, unless I'm misunderstanding or I'm wrong about that. He's not an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year.
No. I know. I know what you're saying, but I don't understand. I think this is what's frustrating me, Grant. I think you're a very knowledgeable person about football, but I think you've hung your hat on this Watson too long, and I don't understand why. Not that I really care. I don't really care, but I don't understand why you think that, because expectations are earned, and you've earned the expectation of being more reasonable on this. Okay. There's nothing there.
I don't know how to feel about this. I'm betwixt and between. Right. I don't know. I'm trying to figure this out. I when we began the show tonight, I did not know whether or not Christian Watson, whether or not Romeo Doubs is going to speak. So I'm figuring this out in real time. I'm not married to any takes. I'm not married to any opinions. I just want to make sure that I'm assigning the seriousness and the validity to the situation that it demands, and I think it demands a certain amount. But I also don't want to go over the top, because I don't think he should be traded. I don't think they should cut out any cancers or drama. Like, hey, the head coach makes a lot of money for a reason, Eric. This is something that a head coach has to deal with. True. A lot of personalities and cooks in the kitchen. That's what a head coach is for.
That's right. And I agree with you. They shouldn't just get rid of him. They should give him another chance, and I guess I really don't care if they give him another chance either. But that's neither here nor there. It's good conversation, Grant. It's always good conversation with you. I enjoy it. I really do.
24 hours until I make my way to the district, Eric, and I am counting down every single minute in my head.
Right. You are on a 24-hour. Well, you're in like a 24-and-a-half-hour countdown right now.
Yeah, 24 and a half.
And you know it's going to get better.
It will.
I tell you what, I feel better. I feel better the minute I know I'm heading that way. I get in the car.
I am going to the. I am. I am.
I had one more thing for you if you have time.
Yeah, hit me. Yeah, you're the last caller on hold. Then we'll take a break. We got time.
There's a defensive player. Who's the guy? Is it Rashawn Gary that you don't like?
No.
Or you're disappointed?
Well, yeah, he's not performing.
Disappointed.
Okay. Thank you for switching up the language. Yep.
Disappointed. I'll rephrase. You objected. I object. All right. So you're disappointed in this play. You know what you got there? You got Danielle Hunter syndrome with this guy. Danielle Hunter. It is. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, Danielle Hunter." Guy didn't do He had one good season when he had a lot of good people around him. Once those people were gone, he didn't do jack.
But the physical traits, right? They just jump off the page. He was the tools.
Right.
He was a third round pick, and mostly because of the physical tools he had, not because of the polish
Physical
or the
traits.
yeah.
Right, and that's another thing that probably carries Christian Watson is his physical traits. The ceiling. The ceiling is so high, right? But I think that's what you got with this Gary guy. I think you got the Neil Hunter syndrome and and scheme. You're so right about the scheme.
Yeah, give me a break.
He's
Scheme.
His scheme. It's scheme. He's got to run forward. And in this scheme, he runs forward.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like he runs forward. Now, I'll give you a good example of scheme, and I'm tooting a little horn here. Here's a good example of guy fitting into a scheme and getting success. Is Van Ginkel getting 2 pick sixes? That is direct result of scheme.
Yes.
Right?
Who?
That is the Van Ginkel for Minnesota.
Oh, Okay, Van Ginkel's an interesting one, Eric. I appreciate it. There's a lot of guys, and Eric, if I seem inattentive tonight, if you're watching the live stream, I've looked at my phone a little bit. I sent some text to Packers people because I'm trying to pick brains of people who are in the locker room, or I'm trying to piece together what I should think about this and how I should say and how I should feel what I should say. So Van Ginkel was this guy in Miami too, under Flores, right? He was there with Flores. So maybe Flores just understands how this guy ticks, how he works. Van Ginkel's just awesome. And shout out to Denny and Holman, who once upon a time was like, look, I like Rashawn Gary, but he's no Andrew Van Ginkel, which is one of the funniest calls the show's ever gotten. And I'm glad it still gets referenced. And I'm glad Denny, takes victory laps about that. The scheme thing is funny. It's like, dude, go hit the quarterback. Rashawn Gary might not be a good fit for Jeff Hafley's scheme. Go rush the passer. Kenny Clark might not be a good fit for Jeff Hafley's scheme. Go rush you're a defensive lineman. What do you mean? You're not dropping into coverage, zone versus man. Go hit the quarterback. Let's take a couple-minute break, come back. Some closing thoughts on the Packers, some thoughts on Jesse Winker, and then we'll talk with Jesse Temple. Talk Badgers at the bottom of the hour at 5:30 from The Athletic. It's the Wisco Sports Show. We're back after this.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Well, I mean, they were going to fire Sal at the end of the year anyway. They've hitched their wagon to this epic a-hole. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers, this loser a-hole who's checked out. So of course, Aaron Rodgers has a problem with Saleh because Rodgers has a problem with everybody. That's his calling card. He has no relationship that lasts with anyone, never any significant other, no family member. He's estranged from everybody.
Welcome back, Wisco Sports Show. That soundbite really doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about. Guess the Rodgers, Saleh, Woody Johnson, Nathaniel Hackett, Jeff Albrecht. I guess that's continuing today. I just cut that audio earlier today because it's a soundbite that made me laugh. It's funny. It's a radio show, so why not play the soundbite? Got a kick out of it. Any final thoughts? Send them to me in a text. 608-321-1670. Got a couple minutes here. We'll take our next break, and then we'll talk Badgers with Jesse Temple from The Athletic, who will be here just after 5:30. Got a text here. Tyler from Eau Claire says, former Badger Andrew Van Ginkel is close to Clay Matthews 2.0. You and Denny from Holman should start a club, a book club, or Bunko. I don't know. What do people have clubs for anymore? We don't get together for anything anymore. Pampered Chef parties. People used to gather. Nobody gathers anymore. Clemhead Mike texts in. Says, I'm not upset about the Doubs thing. I'm more upset about Gary. I said last year that he would disappear once he got paid. I don't know. Everyone wants to say that guys get paid and then they get lazy. Maybe some players. I think it's more common in the NBA. I don't know. In the NFL, I don't know that you can get lazy. And I'm sure there are levels, right? There are guys who try really hard like Brady. And then there are guys like Rodgers who I don't think are pedal to the metal all the time, but you still have to work so hard to even play, to be a player in the NFL. I don't think getting lazy after you get paid is as much of an option in football as it might be in basketball or in baseball. When Anthony Rendon was like, yeah, I got my contract. This is more of a job for me, if I'm being honest. What a bozo. Cone Roller says that you're from Menominee when you just had Shake Shack for the first time. Where is it? Where is Shake Shack? Is there a Shake Shack in Madison? I'm not looking. I almost started Googling Shake Shack locations in Wisconsin. When would I get Shake Shack? Isn't that a Southwestern thing anyways? Cone, you live in Phoenix. Easy for you to say. Shake Shack. Never had it before. It was pretty good. I'd get it again in an airport. Your food standards change a lot when you're in an airport. Here's a text that gets us into our next topic. Thoughts on Jesse Winker? F that guy. Those are my thoughts. That's a great text. Text of the day, actually. We don't have a special sound effect for that or anything, but there we go. Crown it. Text of the day. There's a story. There's a couple stories that came out. Journal Sentinel story came out. I first saw Mark Sanchez's New York Post story. Ryan Glasspiegel, our friend and contributor to the show, and purveyor of all things Brewers and Paige Baronic, shared the story last night, titled Jesse Winker endearing himself to Citi Field faithful and leaving hated Brewers in past. Jesse Winker took a shot at his city from his past, then launched a shot further that endeared him to his fan base of the present. Winker, the former Mets nemesis, who enjoyed needling fans as an opponent, is won over Queens with both his style of play and his play and style of play. Sorry, I'm struggling to read. He left Milwaukee behind and is swinging his way into the hearts of Mets fans. Scrolling. Don't care about the Mets stuff. He says, as far as Milwaukee goes, Winker said in a game before which he drilled one homer and missed another, I'll hate them forever. Winker was a Brewer in 2023, and he did not hit well after offseason surgeries on his knee and a disc replacement. He was making about $8 million in an arbitration year and felt obligated to play. And I didn't perform, Winker said. He somewhat controversially cracked the postseason roster and received 2 at-bats as a pinch hitter in that year's wildcard series against the Diamondbacks. He struck out and grounded out and was booed loudly by his own team's fans. Again, I'm struggling. It's late. Winker returned to Milwaukee during the season-ending sprint and was drilled by a first-pitch 97-mile-an-hour Frankie Montas fastball in the butt in the 4th inning. Winker believed that something similar would happen in the series and believes the Montas pitch was intentional. He said there's a mutual respect between him and Montas and said if you're going to hit someone, that's probably the right way to go about it, aiming in his backside. Okay, well then what's the problem? If you're going to hit him, there's a right way to go about it. He hit you in the ass. What more do you want? But the pitch had side effects. It kind of triggered a little disc injury in my lower back, getting out of the way. So I was definitely pissed about that. Are you sure you didn't injure it in one of the other instances where you leaned over the plate, normally leaning over forward? Stressful on the back, leaning into a pitch. Did that a couple of times in the wild card series. That game became his final regular season game, returning for game 1 of the wild card series. Winker drilled a 2-run triple in the Mets' victory and exchanged verbal jabs with Brewers shortstop Willie Adames, who told Winker he would meet him in the parking lot after the game, and that he indeed waited in the lot. Winker said he has not talked with Adames since and has no intentions to. That's nice. Here's the thing about Jesse Winker and guys like Jesse Winker. Athletes like Jesse Winker. There are lots of players who have got big contracts and not lived up to them. There are lots of players who have got big contracts coming off an injury, as Jesse Winker did last year with the Brewers, and have not performed. See Hoskins, Rhys. You know the difference between Rhys Hoskins and Jesse Winker? Rhys Hoskins isn't an ass. He has some shred of maturity and just a little thing, and I think this is really important. It's very underrated in today's society. It's a skill or it's a trait. It's a personality quirk called self-awareness. Fewer and fewer people have it. Jesse Winker does not. Jesse Winker wore out his welcome in Cincinnati. He wore out his welcome in Seattle. Both have been widely reported. He wore out his welcome in Milwaukee with fans and his teammates. He sucked all year. Sometimes players suck. We are not unsympathetic to that. When you suck and act like it's everybody else's problem and act like a child, a little bit of a problem. I don't feel quite as bad for you when you make it out to be everyone else's issue. Well, I'm making all this money. What do you want from me? I don't know. Don't act like such a dick. How's that for step 1? I don't know. And again, theme of the show, don't be a child. That's all I ask of my professional athletes. You're obviously not going to homer every time you go up to the plate. Not every season is going to be a banner year for every single baseball player. But can you act like an adult? You know how many stories you could find of Jesse Winker in the Brewers clubhouse just acting like a child? Grow up. Okay? I felt pressure to perform. What pressure? You got 200 plate appearances. The Brewers were never taking away. Your playing time was never in danger. You got a postseason roster spot. What pressure was there? Oh, Brewers fans were mean to me. Man, if you were playing for the Phillies, they would have dragged you behind a car by the end of May. Right down the street in front of Citizens Bank Park. They would have dragged you they would have tied your hands and feet. They would have dragged you across the pavement. Oh, Brewers fans grow up. We didn't boo you because you sucked, although that was a big part of it. We also booed you because you're an ass. So, I don't know. I hope Jesse Winker takes another pitch to the back. Sorry, I don't wish injury on anyone. 608-321-1670. If you have thoughts, text them to me. Can't take your call because we're going to take a call with Jesse Temple. The Athletic. You can hear him on the camp with Zach as well. We'll talk Badgers football next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. Starting to wrap up the show tonight. I said starting. We had a lot left before we turn things over to Bill. The Bill Michaels Huddle coming up at 6 o'clock. He'll give you his takes on Matt LaFleur's comments today, and I guess the lack of commentary from Romeo Doubs because he was not available to the media in the 45 minutes that the locker room was open. Christian Watson spoke. He talked all about it. Romeo Doubs did not, and I'm doing my best to sort through how I feel about that and how important, good or bad, or I don't know. I'm figuring it out. In real time as we realized about 4:30 that he wasn't going to speak with the media. In the meantime, while we wait for Bill, hey, Jesse Temple of The Athletic. Let's talk some Badgers football. Jesse Temple is here, The Athletic, covering the Badgers. You can hear him on the camp with Zach Heilprin as well. He's got an article out at The Athletic now about some of the comments from Phil Longo, who met with the media this week for the first time in a couple of weeks, and some of the great offensive statistics. Wisconsin scoring 50 points on Purdue this last weekend. So, Jesse, Purdue's not a good team. Their own coach said it. But I think in this moment of this season, Luke Fickell and his players, they just needed a week to just breathe and exhale and to celebrate. They needed an opportunity to celebrate something. Forget the opponent, forget who it was, forget how it looked. Isn't this such a huge week for them just to be able to be together and to celebrate something, a win like that? It felt like they needed that for the last year and a half now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to put it. Luke was talking on Monday about the fact that there were 41 seconds left in the third quarter, and he wanted Wisconsin to run the ball so the clock would go down to 0. They could flip the field and they'd be closer to the student section and they could celebrate, jump around together. And Wisconsin ended up scoring a touchdown with 12 seconds left in the third quarter. and I put this in my story, but it was one of the few times you could say in this era that their offense was actually too good. So I think they certainly needed a game like this. That was a laugher. There have been very few of these, and you're right. Purdue is a bad team. When the head coach, Ryan Walters, says it about his own team, you know you're in a terrible spot as a program. But nonetheless, Wisconsin has played inferior foes and not won 52-6. So they have reason to celebrate.
Exactly, right? I don't know how good or bad Western Michigan and Purdue are if you were to compare them, or South Dakota. If they would have blown out South Dakota or Western Michigan earlier this year, maybe we would have celebrated a little bit more instead of looking at those victories a little side-eyed. I want to ask you about the running game, especially because of what happened last week with Ches Malusi, but on the passing game really quickly, because they racked up a ton of passing yards. Tretch Kekahuna with 130 plus yards passing, 2 touchdowns. Do you think they found something there? It seemed like for the whole season, there's potential, there's talent, there's real ability there, but they hadn't really been able to tap into it consistently. Did Phil Longo maybe figure out something, or did Tretch maybe figure out something that they can actually tangibly use moving forward? Was that maybe a nice step in the right direction for a talented young wide receiver?
Well, I know Phil had a meeting with Tretch, which is something Phil says he does with a handful of players each week, just to talk about, we need more of you and we know you can be better. And Tretch certainly responded. You look at the numbers through the first 4 games, he only had 4 receptions and was targeted a total of 10 times. Well, Will Pauling goes down, as does Bryson Green and Tyrell Henry, and Tretch becomes basically the number 1 option. He had 6 catches for 134 yards and was targeted 9 times. We've seen this type of playmaking ability from him dating back to the spring, and it was just a matter of how they could figure out a way to get the ball in his hands. And there was a concerted effort, I think, early on in that game to try to do it in some different ways, where he was motioning across the field and Braden Locke would kind of flip him the ball, get him out in space. But the 2 touchdown plays that he had shows his explosive playmaking ability, and they're certainly going to need more of that. I'll be curious to see what they do when Will is able to go. And we did talk to Will this week, which means he's healthy enough to be practicing, because they're in a spot where they play the same position. And if you put them both on the field, you might have a situation where you want a formation and you don't want 2 slot receivers. So that's kind of the delicate balance that Longo's trying to strike.
The quarterback who was throwing Kekahuna the ball, Braden Locke, had a really nice day, 350 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Phil Longo mentioned this in his conversations with you, and I heard you talking about this with Zach on the camp as well. Braden Locke checked, I don't remember what the number was. He checked like 17 calls at the line, and Phil Longo believed that like 16 of those 17 were a good adjustment. Like Braden Locke was using his mental ability and and his mental acuity, I guess, at the line to really help put the offense in good positions. That's been one of his strengths, right? That's one of the reasons that they've liked Braden Locke, even though he was the backup, or he started the season as the backup.
Very much so. Obviously, Braden is now in year 2 of Longo's system, year 3 of college football, and that's one of the things that's given him an advantage from the outset. Now, does he have all the physical tools like a Tyler Van Dyke? No, but he's certainly got enough of it to be able to put together a game where he can throw for 359 yards, which is the 7th most in a single game in program history. And Phil puts a lot on his quarterbacks. That's one of the reasons quarterbacks want to play for him, is because they have a lot of choice and decision-making at the line of scrimmage. And so for Braden to be able to do that says a lot about his knowledge, his study habits, his understanding of tendencies, what the other defense is going to do. And certainly they're going to need more of that, because this is really a 3-game stretch that I think goes a long way toward defining the season. They're 3-2 right now. They've got Rutgers and Northwestern, and I think people believe they're capable of being 5-2. Really, they kind of need to, I think, based on what the rest of the schedule has for them, to try and get to bowl eligibility.
Your opinion, has Braden Locke, since taking over for Tyler Van Dyke, exceeded your expectations, met your expectations, coming short? Like when Tyler Van Dyke went down, and you're starting to think about maybe what Braden Locke could do over the next couple of weeks, has he exceeded? Has he met your expectations? What have you seen from him since Van Dyke went down?
It's still pretty early in the process, right? He came in under really difficult circumstances against Alabama in the first quarter. He completes 13 of 26 passes. Wisconsin gets blown out. They have a really good first half against USC. He ends up completing 13 of 26 passes again, and Wisconsin loses. And then he has this great game against Purdue. He was kind of uneven last year as well when he got those 3 starts. Led a comeback late against Illinois, but otherwise didn't win any of the other starts, including a loss to Indiana. So it's really, to me,
kind of too early to make judgment calls on Braden. He's got potential in him, obviously, but they've got 7 regular season games to go, and as long as he's healthy, he's going to be the guy, which means that the rest of this regular season offers him more starts than he's had in his career to date. And so I think we can really have a good conversation about his place in this program by the end of November. But so far, I'd say maybe met expectations with an opportunity to exceed them.
I think so. And it has only been 2 games, and at USC and at home against Purdue, those are 2 extremes. That's a great matchup in a tough environment on a road trip, and maybe one of the worst teams in college football. Their own coach said it after the game. So the next 2 weeks, the next couple weeks, like you said, will be really instructive. Jesse Temple of The Athletic is here. You can hear him on the camp, read his story about the Badgers offense and where it stands. Some commentary from Phil Longo earlier this week included in that story as well. Some great numbers. The running back room. So last week we learned that Ches Malusi is going to step away from the program. I don't blame him. I feel really bad for him because I think he made a great choice coming to Wisconsin. I think the fit was great and had his body allowed, I think he would have been I mean, in the limited action he got, he was really productive. It just didn't work out for him. So I want to be respectful to him when I ask this question. Last week, Luke Fickell talked about maybe consolidating the carries in the running back room to allow the guys to get into a little bit more rhythm. Now with Malusi out of the picture, do we have a little bit of a clearer path moving forward with some of these Badgers backs? Does the path forward actually maybe get a little cleaner and easier to figure out what they have and to best maximize some of these guys?
Well, definitely, because they were in a spot where they had Ches Malusi and Tui Walker, both seniors, both guys who had established based on their practices that they were going to be 1-2. And yet they had Cade Giacomelli, who's got more yards per carry than any running back, and 2 4-star running backs that Wisconsin really wanted to figure out a way to get on the field. And it's awfully hard to do that when you've got a 1-2 combination that doesn't include those freshmen. So Ches certainly dealt with a number of injuries, and this year just really didn't necessarily look like the same player that we saw at his apex. And he went through a lot. He missed last season, missed a couple seasons ago as well, and underwent what he said in the spring was a full ankle reconstruction in addition to recovering from a broken leg. So certainly wish him the best. But at this stage, what they have is Tui Walker as their bell cow. We saw it against Purdue where he carried the ball 19 times for 94 yards and scored 3 touchdowns. And then a change of pace type of guy with Darian Dupree, who while his yards per carry isn't particularly high, can make you miss at any point. And his pass catching ability is outstanding, the best among the running backs there. Cade Giacomelli breaks off a touchdown, and even Dylan Jones, the other 4-star freshman, got in there late and broke off a 47-yard run. So they have some options, but I think right now it's Tui Walker and then Darian Dupree, and can you sprinkle in a Cade Giacomelli occasionally?
These next 2 weeks are huge. They go to Rutgers, and I want to ask you specifically about that game in a sec. And then they go to Northwestern. Those games are important because the rest of the schedule is, I'm not saying none of those games are winnable. I hope that they're able to beat a Penn State at home. Wouldn't that be great? Or to beat Iowa at Kinnick. But Penn State, Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, Minnesota. Minnesota just got maybe one of the bigger wins in PJ Fleck's time at the program. Like the rest of the schedule after these next 2 games is a murderer's row. So let's start with Rutgers. This is a physical team. The Badgers are underdogs by a couple of points in New Jersey at 11 o'clock on Saturday. What's your original read, or I guess your first thoughts at how maybe this matchup shapes up on Saturday?
It's going to be a tough physical game, and Luke Fickell wants his team to be in an image of tough and physical. And if you really want to be that, you have to go prove it in a game like this. Rutgers is, I think, 4-1, coming off a loss to Nebraska, and it was 14-7 in Lincoln. And they've got one of the best running backs in the Big Ten, and Kyle Monungai. So Wisconsin's going to have to figure out a way in this one, because I think that Purdue game is, the fan base to me, it's like, well, that's great. It's good that Wisconsin was able to blow out a team because we haven't really seen that. But, and everything comes with the caveat of, can you replicate it? And can you do it against a good college football team? Because we've not seen that yet, at least a good FBS level team. Now, South Dakota is a very good FCS team, but obviously Wisconsin is playing in the Big Ten. So I think they're going to have to play very good football. And the hope is that they can build on what they did against the bad Purdue team and carry it forward.
Okay, so I actually want to throw it back for my last question. I want to throw it back to last year, and you've referenced this a couple of times when they looked really good and they were competitive for whatever it's worth against Ohio State at home with Braden Locke. They lost that game 24-10. I thought they played very well at Camp Randall that night, and then they followed that loss up by losing to a bad Indiana team and no showing in the first half against Northwestern. And to your point, and you've referenced this a couple times this year, it doesn't matter if you show up and you contend with a great program and you appear to be taking a step in the right direction if you don't follow it up. Right. So considering that 3-week stretch last year where they had a chance to take a step and didn't, what do they need to do over these next 2 weeks to follow up a good performance with a step in the right direction? Something they, under Luke Fickell so far, haven't been able to do.
Well, I'm not expecting 600 yards of total offense or something close to that like Wisconsin had against Purdue. Rutgers has a very solid defense, but can you score touchdowns? When you get into the red zone, you don't want to settle for field goals. Defensively, I mean, what they did against Purdue, yes, Purdue is bad, but Purdue was also in a spot where they're inside the 5-yard line on 2 separate occasions, and the Badgers bowed up and held them to field goals and then just didn't allow Purdue to do much else. So you're going to need complementary football. I know that's a cliched phrase. We hear it all the time. But they're going to need to play one of their best games of the season to go on the road and beat Rutgers. This game is turned out to be, I think, much more challenging than maybe people would have thought at the beginning of the year, because Rutgers hasn't really been a team that Wisconsin has had to worry about much. But that's not the case this year. So this is a big one for the Badgers. There's no doubt about it.
I think so. I'm happy that it's an 11 a.m. game. I like getting up early and having a game on the television. Jesse, we look forward to your coverage and hearing you on the podcast with Zach and on our other shows as well. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Grant.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. Last couple minutes, Bill Michaels huddle coming up in about 10 minutes, right on the knob. He'll give you his thoughts on what Matt LaFleur had to say this afternoon. Mark Schofield did a hell of a job summarizing what's going on around the NFL this week. Earlier today, you'll hear that conversation as well. And Bill's thoughts on what Romeo Doubs had to say, which was nothing. So you'll hear Bill's thoughts on the fact that Romeo Doubs did not speak with the media when the locker room was opened up this afternoon. 608-321-1670. If you want to call or text, just throw some open phone lines if you want to get in at the end. By the way, yes, I'm sure there's Shake Shacks around the state of Wisconsin. I'm sure there's some in Madison. There's probably some in Milwaukee. That's nice. Everyone's like, there's a Shake Shack in Hilldale. Okay, well, next time I'm in Hilldale. I was in Hilldale not that long ago. I was there before the Bama game because I needed to get a red shirt because I'm a team player and I wanted to make sure that I was contributing to the red-white stripe out they were doing. So I was in Hilldale. I didn't see the Shake Shack. Hilldale was popping, which makes sense. I guess it was a Friday night. Still, I was impressed. I was not familiar with Hilldale's game. So thank you for everyone letting me know where the Shake Shacks are. This text just says, I was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Huh? All right. Other question. This one from the 414. Jesse Winker is a psycho-jilted ex who wasn't even in the relationship with the chick very long and won't give it up that it didn't work out. I'll hate you forever. Bro, we forgot you were even here. Shut up and go away. Matt from Wausau. Yes and no. I mean, we're booing him pretty hard. It's hard to say that we forgot that he was here when we're booing him really hard in a playoff series. The problem is, if the Brewers just would have won that game 1 or game 3, either one, they had leads in both. Take your pick. If the Brewers win either of those games, we're not having to deal with this right now. So as much as I hate Jesse Winker, I hate the Brewers more for making me deal with Jesse Winker and for dealing with Cubs fans in my mentions, for everything else that comes with these early playoff exits. It's the Brewers' fault, ultimately. So at the end of the day, I'm mad at them more than I am angry at Jesse Winker, or more than I dislike Jesse Winker. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's your boy Hot Take Jake. Let me talk to you.
All right, go ahead. Got time.
So, first things first, Jesse Winker, I mean, it just kind of reminds me of that, like, everybody has a victim complex today. Everybody needs to feel like they're a victim, that they were wronged in some way, whether or not it's justified or valid, whatever. Let the dude live in his own delusional land where he didn't bat hit, less than his actual playing weight. But I want to talk a little bit about little Doubs, little Rogers.
Yeah.
And I know you're kind of limited on time here, but number one, Rogers, I mean, this is delicious. I love that, ironically, the guy who just always has to have everything be about him. Everything's going to be about you as you wither away and your career dies. You brought this on yourself. It's hilarious because I wish I could go back and, heart all the tweets that when the Jets first traded for Rodgers, that trying to warn the Jets fans, like, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And sure as you know what,
So,
it's happening right in front of our eyes.
Rodgers could have publicly, at least in front of the cameras, been a little bit more accommodating to Robert Saleh. And I guess he didn't need to go to Egypt, although I don't know if Rodgers was great in the building and had been playing well. I don't know that Egypt trip really matters. I don't think it's Rodgers' fault that Robert Saleh isn't a good coach. And I don't think it's Rodgers' fault that the Jets aren't well run. I think there's a separation of church and state here with the Jets and Rodgers. And I think it's a little unfair to just make all of this Rodgers' fault. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm not even blaming him. I'm not saying this is all his fault. I'm just saying you reap what you sow. You get what you deserve. And hey, have fun with that. Yeah. And as far as the Romeo Doubs stuff, like, look, I'm going to take Green Bay's word for it as far as whether or not he's in a good place with them. But if not, like, receiver is your deepest position. You got plenty other areas that need help, and he's a good young player. If you need to make a move, there you go. There's your piece. So whatever happens, I always trust in the G.
So possibly, Hot Take Jake, that's a good call. Thank you. Maybe that's ultimately where it goes. I don't know. There's so much season. There's so much season left. It's not even midway through October yet. There's so much season. We're through 5 games. So there's so much season left. I can't tell the future. I can't tell you that this will all be fine and this will all cool down. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll get worse. Maybe this will come to a point where the Packers and Doubs actually need to separate. I don't think it will, but it could. I'm not going to tell you that it won't. I don't know. No one does. But I think it was Joy Taylor who made this point. Maybe I'll try to find it. Maybe I'll find this audio for tomorrow's show. This is what head coaches are paid for. Head coaches are paid for scheme, right? Offense, defense, probably. Not all coaches. There's some coaches that are just leaders, right? But most have some scheme that they bring along. Football acumen, of course, they're paid for that. But they're also paid to manage personalities. Like 53 of them. It's really, really hard. That's like 90% of the job in the NBA is, can you just keep everyone from killing each other? Can you keep everyone from wanting to get traded? If you could do that as an NBA coach, you have done your job correctly, right? That's like 90% of the job in the NBA. And there's a lot more scheme. There's a lot more actual football acumen that goes into coaching at the NFL level, but it's a lot of management of personalities too. Personalities on the defense, different than the offense. Corners and receivers have different dispositions than players in the trenches on the offense or defensive line, right? That's why head coaches make a lot of money. It's not just to call plays. It's not just to organize practices and structure meetings. It's to manage these things. So for all the Packers fans that wanted Romeo Doubs traded at the drop of a hat when this first came out, and I know that's not what Hot Take Jake was just saying. He's just saying maybe at some point it happens, and it could. I don't know. But this is why Matt LaFleur, he's a big boy. He can take care of himself. As an NFL head coach, this is something that you have to deal with. And I don't think Romeo Doubs is a diva per se. I think he's an interesting personality. And this is an interesting situation. And it's another opportunity for Matt LaFleur to prove his wares. I do think it's funny. It's like the universe keeps testing Matt LaFleur. It's like, oh, you turned Jordan Love's rookie season around last year? Well, win with Malik Willis now. Oh, you won with Malik Willis? Here's Romeo Doubs. He's not happy. Figure out how to deal with that, right? Like it is kind of funny. Matt LaFleur has to be tired. It's like, why do you keep giving me your toughest battles, God? Because you're my toughest soldier, strongest soldier. Matt LaFleur could probably just go for a month of easy coaching. No problems, no drama, nothing like that. But that will not be this month. Romeo Doubs didn't speak today. If you want to hear the big units perspective on that, the Bill Michaels Huddle firing up in just a couple of minutes. I will be back with Bill tomorrow at 10 and, of course, tomorrow at 4. Programming note, no Friday show this week. I'm taking Friday off. I will literally be gone fishing. So let's make it big tomorrow. Don't miss it. I'll be back tomorrow at 4. Talk to you.